Hey everybody, so I wanted to give a quick update on where we are with the floats. You can see I'm infilling one at a time. I'm going to try and do them simultaneously. But we did mention something about shaping the nose block. So here you see the raw nose block that I've attached to the non-infilled framed up pontoon or float, and you can see how that goes on there. What we do is we just take our block, our raw block, for instance, I guess I've put it away, but the well, it's a 4" by 4" square of 5/8 balsa material. We just set our float on it like so and trace around the float with a pencil, trace around the edges of the profile of the nose of the float with our pencil, and then using a razor saw we just cut along each of those lines, and what we're left with is a block that looks exactly like this. So we mark the top of it and align that with the top of our float, and then it can only be glued to the float one way. We put a T, obviously mark it as the top. And then I've added a little bit of nose weight to each of the floats, and that's just so that they'll sit, and the airplane itself will sit up on the float like this and not be rocked back on its tail. We have pretty much our scale height. Let's see, our fuselage will probably sit like this, just about this far back from the nose of the float, and maybe perhaps just a little bit, the floats will be set just a little bit wider than that. But there's the raw block, and then here we are as I've been sanding. The top 3 sides of the float are completed and infilled. The only thing remaining is the forward underside of the forward float section. That's all that's remained to be infilled. But on the top 3 sides, and again a little bit on the bottom, I've gone ahead and shaped our block, and that's just done simply with the sanding block, this bad boy right here, with about a 100 grit sandpaper. And then all you're doing is sanding along the lines, the flat surfaces of the finished sides of the float, and you sand the block down into that, and then you sand continuous across as you sand off of the edge and back. You just sand each side or each facet to the correct profile, and that's the quickest and easiest way to shape a sanding block. In other words, you're gonna shape the block first off of the float and then stick it on the float and call it good. That's just not how it can be done properly. You're actually going to attach the raw wood to the block and then sand into the shape. Sand it into the shape that you want at the nose, using the shape of the existing contours to define the contours of the block, if that makes sense. Okay, so I just wanted to, brief update, show you where we're at. Lots of work to do. The infill is pretty, infill is infill. You've seen me do most of it so far, and over the course of the 2 projects, the biplane and now the Champ. So I'm not gonna, I might do some more time lapse, maybe on the other float. But there really isn't a whole lot that changes from, one area of infill to another. A little bit that we talked about with the fuselage. There are some radius, some curves here, but again, I just, did what I did with the Aeronca, made a few paper templates, or just shaped each piece by hand and by eye prior to fitting them. Again, the fit does not necessarily have to be perfect on the floats. We're going to be using some spackle here, and we'll get all the edges nice and sharp where they need to be sharp, and we'll get them nice and rounded where they need to be rounded. So, a lot of that shaping and profiling will be done on the back end. Up front, you just want to make sure the floats are square and straight, and you want to make sure your infill is consistent, and then you want to make sure you conform and shape the nose block properly. You're not rounding into it too much or leaving it too high in spots. Alright, so we'll get back to it here shortly. I just wanted to give an update. Later.